Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Community Freedom Summit. My name is Kathie Gray, and I am president of Not For Sale One Step at a Time, and we are the ones that are hosting this event for all of you today. I just want to share a little bit about who we are and what we do in the community. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we focus on education, prevention, and awareness of human trafficking right here in our community. We have a lot of goals, a lot of dreams, a lot of things that we want to see happen within this organization. But it takes all of us. It takes all of us to link arms together to handle such a God-sized problem. And so today, you're going to hear from top leaders in our community that we partner with, that we work with to help eradicate human trafficking forever. So we're excited that you're here. Thank you for tuning in, and sit back, relax, and get excited for the education that you're going to learn about today. So we're going to start off the morning with my friend Jim. Hi, Jim.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent.
Jim is from PAS in the Stark County Prosecutor's Office, and so he's going to share today about who he is and what he's doing within the community.
Yes, I'm part of PAFS, the Partners Against Trafficking of Humans in Stark County, and it was formed around 2007. I think it's an offshoot or a branch of the Cleveland outreach to end human trafficking. And our mission statement remains that we want to educate and advocate for the prevention and abolition of human trafficking while connecting services on behalf of trafficked persons. That has been our mission statement and goal, and we try to help out however we can and partner however we can. And as you had stated, I'm also with Stark County Prosecutor John Ferrero's office. I'm their certified crime prevention specialist, and seeing the link between stopping human trafficking and crime prevention was very vital and important. And so that's why I wanted to be a part of the organization, because my job involves outreach to the communities on ways to prevent crime. And human trafficking, preventing that and being aware of that is vital.
Oh, for sure. And we're so grateful for your organization.
Thank you.
I mean, and everything that you do within our community. But we actually have a partnership.
We do.
PAS and Not For Sale. We've partnered up this year. And if you want to share a little bit about that.
Yes, I think what we wanted to do is because we wanted to make sure that we were both, I guess you could say, singing from the same hymn book. And when we go out into the community, and we just wanted to make sure the information that we were sharing to everybody, it was in sync and on par with everything that we were talking about. And I think what we are stronger together. So we value the partnerships that we have with so many different organizations, whether it's Rahab Ministries,
Absolutely.
and Hannah's House, which provides mentoring, and also to all of our law enforcement teams, especially the Stark County Sheriff's Office and Stark County Prosecutor's Office as well. We're all trying to work together to put a stop to human trafficking.
And don't you agree that that's what's so needed in our community and in our state and even at a global level is all of us just need to unite together, because this problem is far bigger than you and I.
I think it's all about collaboration.
Absolutely. Well, share with us about what you're doing at the Stark County Prosecutor's Office. I know that they have a big role with what we're doing in the community, but how are they keeping us safe? And what are the specific laws that have been implemented to get traffickers off the streets as well as to help the victims?
Mainly for trafficking and for those who commit trafficking, it is ranked as a felony, and a felony is the most serious charge. Okay. And it can be it can range from a felony 2 to a felony 3. So those can carry some serious consequences along with it. However, at the same time, for those who are affected, who are victims of trafficking, we want to provide support for them as well and not treat them as criminals, especially if it's something that could be related to prostitution or labor. I think one of the things we want to be also careful about, and our prosecutors try to watch for, is a lot of times human trafficking may not come out and announce itself. This is what exactly that it is. It may be underneath other crimes that could be taking place, such as homicide, domestic violence, kidnapping, rape. things like that, or even related to drugs, obviously.
Sure.
There's a huge connection there. So those are things that we always want to be mindful of and help victims that need that support. We have a victim witness division. We have advocates that will help victims in all cases, but we have been told to be watching for and enter in statistics as it's related to human trafficking. Finally, in our juvenile division, we have a special docket that's set aside for those who want to be, are seeking to be rehabilitated, because the idea is not to just punish them, especially at the juvenile level. And if they are involved with things related to trafficking, we have a team made up of prosecutor from our juvenile division, as well as probate court and other social service agencies that will meet on a weekly basis. And review cases, what's called promise court, and we'll review those cases and see where that person is at. And we've had situations where they have been able to graduate and move on, because the whole goal is rehabilitation and not to make the situation worse for them.
Oh, that's wonderful that we have those programs for the victims, and we have people specifically here to help them during this very painful time in their lives. One of the biggest topics that we get asked a lot about is internet safety. How can we keep ourselves safe on the internet? How can we keep our children safe on the internet? So if you could share some tips on that would be awesome.
Absolutely. Main thing is, if you get a personal request from somebody that you don't know on any social media site or app, whether that's Facebook, Snapchat, or Instagram, or even in an online game, because we've had situations like that happen before. If they contact you out of the blue, if they're asking for personal information, or asking for you to send a picture or anything like that, be wary, do not provide that, especially if you are under the age of 18. Don't be afraid to talk to your parents about it, because your parents may need, in that case, to contact somebody with law enforcement in the school just to make sure that they are aware, because the way that this could be related to human trafficking is that somebody may reply and send either a picture or video, and then they're going to threaten to release that to everybody or put that on a certain site or app unless they do something that the perpetrator on the other end wants them to do. And parents, best thing that you don't want to do for your children is, when you get the phones, make sure they understand the rules, the ground rules that are in place, that the phones are going to be checked, that apps and other sites that they may want to download or put on their phone, they need to be approved first, and that parents may want to go through those phones just to make sure that nothing ill-advised is going on. And make sure that parents help their children understand this is not just to be overbearing or anything like that. It's about keeping them safe. That's why those rules are in place, and that's why they have to follow them. And another fun thing, finally, that parents and kids can do is that the kids can show their parents how certain apps or how certain games work, because what you're trying to do is facilitate a conversation. It's all about communication, but understanding why those rules are in place and understanding the value of keeping them safe.
And you and I have talked about too, when we're out educating the community, the importance of understanding all these apps, because we're both parents. These apps change, I feel like, almost weekly. There's new apps that come out, and as parents, it's important that we research those and understand. And then when we sit down with our kids, just explain those things and just try to, have a better understanding of how these games work and these apps work. We've also talked about having the accounts private.
Yes.
Speak to the benefit of that too.
Make sure you also understand and utilize the privacy settings that are on any apps or sites that you may have an account with. I think that is crucial. And if somebody, like I said, it just goes down to, even if they still find a way and they're sending you friend requests, you don't know them, especially if you're under the age of 18. If they ask to meet, don't, under any circumstance, do that. Let your parents know.
For sure. And just to recap the great information that Jim just shared with us, the most important things is make sure these accounts are private as much as you can. Make sure we keep that communication open with our kids. Rules without relationship equal rebellion. So we want to make sure that we're having that constant open conversation with our kids. And then just making sure too that we understand the apps and the games and just what they're doing and who they're communicating to, and keep that communication open. I think
Right.
that's like the best advice that we could give with internet safety. So thank you for that. And so many people, when we're speaking, they want to know, how can we get involved? How can we get involved in paths? And also, are you accepting any donations at this time?
Well, to get involved, typically we meet on the first Tuesday of the month at 6:00 p.m. at the Canton McKinley Healthcare Center
Okay.
on their first floor. That's 800 Market Avenue North. As right now, due to the COVID pandemic, we've been holding most of our meetings now
Zoom.
on Zoom, as there are so many.
Yes.
We hope to return when it's deemed safe to do so, to go back to holding our regular meetings. But have somebody get a hold of me. I will make sure and point them in the right direction, whether we are meeting on Zoom or meeting at the McKinley Healthcare Center when that resumes. As for donations, we can accept those. Just make those out to PAFs. We don't have a physical office
Sure.
specifically right now, so you may just want to send that to the McKinley Healthcare Center, but just put out attention to PAFs or our name, my name on there. And hopefully, again, we usually do yearly fundraisers, so when it's deemed safe to do so, we hope to return to that, and we'll be sharing that information.
Absolutely. Well, Jim, always, it's a pleasure to sit down with you and to be able to educate together and to help
Absolutely.
our community know what's actually going on here in our community, as well as just with human trafficking in general. So thank you for your information.
Thank you.
And for more information on PAZ, stay tuned, because we're going to show some information on how to reach them, their contact information, website, and how you can donate and be a part of PAZ. So stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody, to our Community Freedom Summit. And this morning, I definitely have the pleasure of sitting here with my dear friend, Cary. Welcome, Kelli.
Thank you so much for having me, Kathie.
Oh,
so happy to
gosh.
be here.
Thank you for saying yes.
Absolutely.
We're excited that we can actually sit here together and share about things that we're both really passionate about, which is preventing human trafficking of all kinds. And so this morning, Kelli's going to share a lot with us. And I'd like you to start off with just sharing about who you are and what you do in our community.
Absolutely, sure. So I am the Vice President of Programming at Rahab Ministries. And Rahab is an organization that has been fighting sex trafficking for the last 18 years.
Wow, 18 years?
I know, yeah. So
I didn't
whenever
realize it was that long.
Absolutely, yeah. So whenever I share that, people are like, wow, because really 18 years ago, that was when sex trafficking was not really a word in our community. Right. So we really started, our founder, Becky, who started Rahab, started by meeting vulnerable women that she knew needed help and wanted to offer hope. And really our programming has just flourished and grown from there based on the education and the need that we've seen in the community.
Wow, what made you guys decide to call your organization Rahab?
Sure. So Rahab stands for Reaching Above Hopelessness and Brokenness. And that's truly what we do is offer hope, hope in Jesus to survivors of sex trafficking and those who are vulnerable to being trafficked.
Well, we are so grateful for your organization. I mean, our community benefits so much from your organization, which we'll talk about, the things that you guys do. But why don't you share a little bit about what programs do you guys offer and what areas are you located in?
Sure. Yeah, so we have programming in all of Northeast Ohio. So our offices are in Summit County, but our programs are serve survivors really across Northeast Ohio. And we have programming, we like to kind of talk about our programming in 3 different buckets.
Okay.
So we have programming in outreach. So we go into the streets, the strip clubs, the jails, correctional facilities. We also have our community-based programming. That's our drop-in centers. So we have a drop-in center in Akron that has existed for over 10 years now.
Wow.
We also have 2 more drop-in centers opening in Stark County this fall, which is so exciting.
Yes.
My hometown, so excited to be able to bring our services here. And then we also have our minor mentoring programming, serving survivors that are court involved or really at risk of being trafficked, and then all the way up to safe housing. And we offer safe housing for adult survivors as well as juveniles. We have a juvenile safe home for girls 11 to 17.
Oh my gosh, Kelli, well, I feel like we have to kind of dissect this a little bit because you guys offer a lot.
Yes.
And I don't want to miss these details because I think it's important for our community to understand that Rahab does so much in this area of human trafficking. So let's talk a little bit about when you were sharing about your drop-in centers. Like what, a lot of people don't even know what that means. What does that mean?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that. I think that a lot of people, when they think of a drop-in center, they either think of kind of like center or cold or even when we say, no, our drop-in center is in a home, that they think, oh, someone sleeps there overnight. It's neither of those things. Our drop-in centers are really places where women can come in out of the chaos of their lives and experience family and community, maybe for the first time. And so it's a place where we have hours of operation where the home is open during the day and often into the evenings as well, for women to come in, meet with staff and volunteers who just love on them, who share a meal with them. We have programming, groups and Bible study, and it's really a place where people can come in, feel peace, have a sense of friendship, and also just have their needs met, whatever those needs might be.
So they can literally just come off the street.
Come off the street.
And just come right in there and literally get a conversation, be able to have a meal with actual other people that just want to serve and just love on them.
Exactly. It's truly one of my favorite areas of our programming because people can come back over and over again, and that's really where that long-term relationship building happens.
Absolutely. And what a need that any victim would want to have, just to be able to come in and maybe not stay, but just be able to come in and get that communication, that love, that relationship. Talk to us about how Rahab goes into the strip clubs and like what is the purpose of that and being on the streets. What are you trying to accomplish by doing that?
Sure. So with outreach into strip clubs or the streets or jails, correctional facilities, any of those places are places where we know there are vulnerable people. So women, men, children that have vulnerabilities are at risk of maybe being trafficked, exploited in some way. So the purpose really of going into somewhere like a strip club would be to create friendship, create relationship, talk to them a little bit about what Rahab is, maybe our other services, maybe invite them to the drop-in center if they'd like to come. But really it's a place where we can show value and show love to people who often are in need of someone truly seeing them for the worth that they have.
Oh gosh, I love that. I love that we're meeting them right where they are. And we're offering that hope. Because so many victims or so many people that are being exploited, they don't have hope. And they don't have that self-worth that so many of us do have. And so to be able to extend that and to love on them right where they are, I just am so grateful that you guys exist. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Share with us a little bit more about when you do get a traffic victim, like what does that process look like for that victim?
Sure. So because we have all those areas of programming, we can encounter someone that's been trafficked in various different ways. So people come to us in all different ways through referrals from the community, through survivors that we've worked with before, through our outreach efforts. And so really the main thing that we're offering is that long-term walking alongside someone relationship, which is the game changer a lot of times. And it's unique because no matter what services we're offering, whether it be case management or mentoring or drop-in or safe housing, any of those things, that's the thing that we've seen to be so needed when working with a survivor is the ability to stay with someone over the long haul and to not give up on them. And I think that, we've really learned over years of doing this work, I've really learned over years of doing this work that the two things that really stick out to me that people really need are safety and then hope.
Absolutely.
We already talked about the hope, but the safety, and what comes with that safety is relationship, someone showing them a safe place to be, or being a safe person for them to talk with.
And I think that's the key. You have so many amazing volunteers that help out, but they're safe people themselves.
That's right.
So you provide that wonderful environment of safety and security, and above all, you give that hope that everybody needs to have. With this pandemic that we are all walking through, how has that affected your organization?
Sure. So we've definitely had to be creative, like a lot of organizations have been during this time. It's been interesting. But, a lot of our core programming, has not changed at all. I mean, we really continue to offer life-saving services for people. We've gotten creative in the way that maybe we do it. One thing that I love to share is that when the stay-at-home order came out in March, our outreach teams that typically go out into the streets or strip clubs, they got creative and were out on the streets in Akron and Canton 5 days a week, meeting with people that maybe they were encountering for the first time, offering hope through a smile, through physical needs, through food and hygiene items, and saying, I'll be back tomorrow to check on you, make sure that you're doing okay. So that was something new that we hadn't done before, not in a formalized way, but throughout the pandemic, that was really special that our outreach teams were able to do.
Don't you love, we just have to be creative in what we're walking through right now with the pandemic. And this is why we have this, you guys. This is why we have the Community Freedom Summit, because we didn't want to be silent. We wanted to make sure that we still were that voice for all of the voiceless. So thank you for doing that. There are so many myths out there. And you and I have talked about this, and we battle this a lot in the trafficking industry. There's a lot of myths and things that are shared on social media that just are not factual. So I would love for you to share with our audience of just what are those myths and where are the facts?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is something I'm really passionate about. I think anyone, like you said, working in this field, we want good information because the good information is how we help. It's how we really engage people who need our help. And so some of the common myths that I've seen a lot recently would be the social media posts, or also just media posts in general, TV, as well as on the internet, regarding trafficking being something that always involves physical force. So we talk a lot about, the way that a victim is lured is through maybe the force, fraud, or coercion. So often we see when working with survivors, it's really that coercion that takes place is how someone 100%. Is lured and groomed into trafficking. And I think the myth that we often hear on social media is that someone is going to physically force someone, kidnap, abduct. Those things happen. Kidnapping and abductions happen, but they're not always tied to human trafficking. And very often, human trafficking is taking place with building those negative relationships. So that could be someone grooming somebody either online, or someone grooming somebody to actually coerce them into performing some type of sex or labor act. That could be a family member, a friend, that could be someone in the neighborhood, a peer. And so often I think I hear, people very scared. I think it comes from a place of fear, which is understandable, but we have to understand what we really need to be fearful of. And I think that the thing is playing on those fears isn't educating somebody. It's really causing more misinformation. So I think those are some of the things. I also think it's really common that we talk a lot about human trafficking only impacting children or females. And really, human trafficking impacts everyone.
Absolutely.
Adults, males, boys, girls, everyone. And so I think it's really important that we know who's at risk and really start talking about what does make somebody vulnerable to being at risk, so we can start debunking some of the myths.
Well, and I think that's great information. And I think you and I both know that a lot of people in our community think that trafficking is going to happen through abductions. So we're not saying abductions don't happen. We're just saying the majority of trafficking is done through social media, through grooming, through negative relationships. So it's important for us to really remember that we've got to just be wise with who we're in relationship with, who we're talking to. And don't you think too, part of the issue is just a lot of people have either their own emotional issues to deal with. We have amazing mental health counselors and people in our area that can help so that people aren't trafficked. I mean, I don't know, maybe you can speak a little bit to that of just like some of the things that are available.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I know that we use the word vulnerability and some people might not know, well, what does that mean?
Sure.
And really that's like anything that might be making you at risk, or maybe something that a trafficker or a master manipulator can use to pull out and lure you into doing some type of sex or labor that they want you to do for their benefit.
Sure.
And so some of those vulnerabilities are things like maybe people experiencing mental health or addiction, not having healthy, safe, supportive people in their life, having difficult home lives, poverty, those things, those vulnerabilities are not choices either.
Right.
So we really have to have empathy and compassion when we're talking about the people that you and I love so dearly and have committed to serving.
Well, thank you for all the information that you've shared. Man, she has shared so much with us, and we're very grateful for Rahab and all the programs that you offer. And please know in our community that we have amazing organizations, agencies, counselors, people that are here to help you. So there's always a way to get the help that's needed. But thank you. And is there any way, as we're wrapping up our segment, is there anything that we could do as a community to help Rahab? Do you need supplies, donations, things like that?
Sure. So like Kathie said, we have amazing organizations in Stark County, Summit County, Northeast Ohio doing this great work.
Right.
Rahab definitely loves volunteers. We love people to come alongside the women and children we're serving. So if you ever want to volunteer, please reach out to rahab-ministries.org. We have opportunities for mentors to come alongside our youth and our adults, as well as serving at our drop-in center, our outreach. And then donations, we can always use donations. We're a nonprofit, so we can always use donations. You can find all that information on our website.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Kelli, for being here today. All the information with Kelli and Rahab will be posted right after this segment. Thank you so much. Welcome back, everybody, to the Community Freedom Summit. Well, this morning, I have the pleasure of sitting here with my new friend, attorney Samantha Salamon. Welcome.
Thank you very much. The pleasure's all mine.
It is definitely my new friend. We just met, and I'm so excited to hear about everything that she's doing in our community to help us combat human trafficking. So, Attorney Salamon, I would love for you to share with everybody who you are and what you do in the community and what organizations you're affiliated with.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
So my name is Samantha Salamon. As you identified me, I am an attorney, but I like to identify myself more as an advocate.
Love.
I advocate for the immigrant and refugee communities. So I am a native of Northeastern Ohio, born and raised here. I moved overseas for a period of time. And then when I came back, I learned to appreciate what the immigrants and refugee communities, how they had to endure living in a new country, not understanding things. That's kind of where my passion drives from. So I started working at the agency to which I work now. It's called Asian Services in Action. We're located in Northeastern Ohio. We provide an array of services, but particularly I'm the manager of what we identify as the Ahimsa department. So we work with survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking, predominantly in the immigrant and refugee communities.
Wow. What was that? That is a lot to unpack a little bit, because you went overseas. Was that like a personal trip that you were on, or was this a missions trip? What was this?
No, it was a personal trip. I went there for about 2 years. I actually practiced as an attorney overseas in the United Arab Emirates.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then that's how this passion got birthed, that you wanted to be an advocate and make a difference?
Yes. Well, my advocacy comes from my social work background.
Okay.
That's kind of what is my burning passion. I became an attorney, though, because I wanted to work with the vulnerable populations. I wanted to help those that need a little bit more help that most people can't get.
Wow, well, thank you for that. Thank you for your heart and your compassion, because that's needed. We need people like you to stand up and fight for those that don't have a voice. So thank you for that. Share a little bit about Ahimsa and like the impact that that organization has on our community.
So Ahimsa is a department under Asian Services and Action.
Okay.
As I stated before, we work with domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking survivors, predominantly in the immigrant and refugee communities. What's kind of unique about our agency or our department is we actually have two sectors under that department.
Okay.
We have general advocacy services, so helping survivors with, everyday situations. They come into our agency and they need an array of services. They need help understanding what is going on with them, what are their rights, how to access public benefits, how to access everyday needs. So we have advocates that work with that, but then we also have a legal section as well. So we have attorneys that are trauma-informed attorneys that are working with the survivors themselves in legal issues such as immigration, such as protection orders, helping them through the criminal justice system, a bunch of different things.
Wow, you guys offer a lot.
Yes.
That can help a lot of different people in many different situations. Speaking to that, we obviously have a labor trafficking issue here in Ohio, and I would love for you to share about what labor trafficking is and what are the signs that someone is being labor trafficked.
Well, I would first like to preface this with the issue around human trafficking as a whole is that whenever somebody thinks of human trafficking, they think of sex trafficking.
Correct.
They have this idea in their head of what they see on TV, what they see on the movies, of what it looks like. But it doesn't necessarily look like that. And on top of there being sex trafficking, there is always that forgotten part of the labor trafficking.
Absolutely.
Which is a whole nother sector of human trafficking. It has its own speciality. Sometimes it does go hand in hand with sex trafficking. But labor trafficking in and of itself is a very unique area, particularly with the populations that I work with. So labor trafficking, I actually brought the definition with me.
Perfect.
Just to kind of make it a little bit better. It's the exploitation of another person to force them into labor or sex trafficking or domestic servitude. So that is a definition. That's a layman's person's definition.
For sure.
There is the legal definition, but again, we are seeing significant issues in even the legal sector in understanding that definition. So in the end of the day, it's forcing somebody to do something that they don't want to do, and it is not competently compensating them for it.
Gotcha.
So what are some significant signs
Yes.
in labor trafficking? Again, as I said, everyone has this ideology of what labor trafficking might look like. Whenever we see posters or something, we see kids in workshops.
Yes.
That tends to be a very common one, but unfortunately, that's not what the majority of labor trafficking actually looks like. Labor trafficking affects both people who are born and raised in America and the immigrant and refugee communities. And we could talk a little bit about that later.
Oh, for sure.
But specifically when looking at labor trafficking, there are multiple signs. There are signs of people that are living in where they work. That tends to be a huge one. Working excessive hours, not having adequate ability of accessing their identification, identification information, such as their license, their passport, their social security number. There's a bunch of different things of working excessively and then not being able to leave independently whenever they want from their workplace, being under a threat or what's called debt bondage, feeling that they have to work something off. There's a bunch of different things. But the idea is just being able to understand what it is.
For sure. And if somebody notices that somebody could be labor trafficked, what do you recommend that they do?
Well, we have, every county is kind of attacking this problem to their best extent. Most major counties, such as Summit County, Cuyahoga County, they have their own coalitions that have their own hotline numbers.
Okay.
I mean, that's something as easy as you can Google. There's also a national hotline number that you can talk to.
For sure.
And most importantly, the easiest way, you can call 911.
Absolutely.
And report it to the authorities. And they are trained to know what to do with it.
And that's what we are advocating to, just to kind of reiterate that point, that if you notice any type of labor trafficking, human trafficking, please call your local police department or 911, because time is of the essence.
Yes.
We want to make sure that we can help every single person that could be trapped in human trafficking, but we will have the actual human trafficking hotline listed throughout our segment, so you'll be able to have that as well. So we know that labor trafficking is happening here in Ohio.
Yes.
What are we doing on a state and local level to combat that?
So like I was saying before, most counties, or, whenever there are smaller counties, they kind of come together and they're trying to create coalitions against human trafficking. And a lot of them is just more about educating the community. That tends to be the biggest issue when it comes to labor trafficking, is people are not educated on the topic.
Absolutely.
People don't understand what it looks like, because again, we have this idea. And people who are being trafficked, some of them are able to roam freely. Some of them able to go to the hospital. Some of them are able to go to, a worship session for whatever religious affiliation they're associated with. They're able to do these things. And because they're able to do that, we don't really necessarily think that that's a problem.
Sure.
But, we did codify. So, human trafficking laws started in federal laws. And then we in Ohio, we codified a state law to fight against it as well. Unfortunately, human trafficking, even in the legal sector, is very misunderstood and is not prosecuted competently. So there is the legislation that's there, but it's whether or not we're actually utilizing it. And again, I feel it all goes back to education.
Absolutely. We feel very strongly about that education is key, that this is 100% preventable, human trafficking, but we just have to have that knowledge. So thank you for sharing so much information about labor trafficking. I think one of the things that a lot of people have asked about and do think about are immigrants actually being targeted for trafficking, and what areas of our legal system do we need to change in regards to protecting immigrants?
So I'd like to make sure that everyone understands. Human trafficking doesn't just happen to immigrants.
Correct.
It also happens to people who are from the United States as well. But the immigrant population, the immigrant and refugee population, shall I say, they're vulnerable. And why are they vulnerable? They typically are vulnerable because they just don't understand. Right. They don't have the knowledge of understanding their rights, their labor rights. A lot of them have linguistic issues. They aren't able to communicate effectively, which puts them at a lower foundation than a lot of people. There are cultural issues, and a lot of the times, especially the refugee community, when they come to the United States, they're not used to necessarily being treated like royalty and having these type of rights that are given to people in America. So the idea of having livable wages is not necessarily something that's foreign to them. So the idea of, well, you're getting paid better here than you are in your own country.
We hear a lot of that.
And that's something that's justifiable.
Yeah.
But in the end of the day, it's not.
Right.
So yes, are the immigrant and refugee communities, are they being quote unquote targeted? I think vulnerable people are being targeted.
Absolutely.
But the immigrant and refugee community are under that vulnerability. Another huge issue that we're facing with the immigrant and refugee community is the fact that their immigration vulnerability. If they're not a citizen here, especially right now, everybody is afraid. Yeah. Everyone's afraid of coming forward, of calling the police if something were to happen. People don't want to do that. They don't want to cause a ruckus. They just want to kind of live and try maintaining with where they're at right now. So yes, they are to a certain extent being targeted.
Wow. What can we do? Well, first of all, I think it's awesome that your organization and the things that you're doing as an attorney and standing up for their rights is amazing. That's something that is important for sure. But I'm just thinking, as you're talking about, as a community, what can we do to make a difference? Because we know that labor trafficking is happening. You did a beautiful job of recapping like the signs of labor trafficking and what we're supposed to do if we see it and acknowledge it. But what can we do as a community to actually prevent it? What can we do?
The problem that I feel we're facing is those that have a voice don't use it accordingly.
So true.
We are very privileged. If you're watching TV, if you have the internet, you're very privileged. If you're from America, you speak English, you understand how the legal system works to a certain extent, you're very privileged. And the problem is that we don't use our privilege to the benefit of everybody else. So yes, if you notice these things, speak up. Because a lot of these people, they don't know how to speak up. And they don't feel that they're able to speak up. And a lot of them are just afraid.
Absolutely.
Because they're in a terrible situation.
Right.
They don't understand how to get out of it. So they need other people to advocate for them that notice these things. And again, understanding the red flags, understanding the signs is key, which is why I always go back to being educated on these topics so that you can actually help people in these situations.
So many good nuggets here, you guys. I just want to recap a little bit because I think it's so important for us to understand, because we talk so much about sex trafficking and human trafficking. And it's just so important that we understand that labor trafficking is just as prevalent. We need to understand those signs. She did a beautiful job telling us about looking, are they working and living in the same place? Are you noticing that they're controlled, that they're vulnerable? Having those conversations. But I think the main thing too is just, as a society, being intentional, being aware of our surroundings, who we're talking to, what's going on in our neighborhoods. I think that would be key. Wouldn't you agree?
Very much so.
That we just have to be aware. And if we have a voice, we need to use that voice. Isn't that perfect? I mean, we have the voice. Let's use it to do good and to make a difference. So Attorney Salamon, what a pleasure.
Oh, the pleasure was all mine.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everything you're doing to fight against trafficking. And just thank you for your voice this morning, because you helped educate our community. So thank you.
No, thank you.
So the organizations that she's a part of, we definitely will have that contact information listed right after this segment so you can get in touch and to help make a difference. Stay tuned, because we have more coming your way. Thank you for tuning in to Community Freedom Summit. I hope you're enjoying the day. We are just talking to so many great people today, and we have even more planned for this afternoon. So today, right now, we get to meet Miss Melanie Anderson from Compass. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much for inviting us to be here.
Absolutely. I know you have a lot to share with us, so we're just going to go ahead and just dive on in. Talk to us about your organization and what you guys do in our community.
So Compass is the Rape Crisis Center for Stark, Carroll, and Tuscarawas counties. So we provide a lot of different programming just to help give support to survivors of sexual violence and co-survivors as well.
Wonderful. What kind of programs do you offer for victims? And what, I know you just shared about the different areas that you're in, but are all these programs at all the different areas, or are they programs specific to certain areas? How does that work?
So some of our programs, well, we cover all of the counties, but we have specific offices in Canton and Stark County and in New Philadelphia and Tusk County. But we provide legal advocacy in all three. So going with survivors sometimes to police interviews, prosecutors interviews if they need us, going to hearings, and just throughout the whole legal process. And then we also go to Mercy Hospital, Altman Hospital, and Union Hospital in Tusk County for a medical advocacy. So if a survivor goes there and wants to talk to an advocate or wants someone there while they get a kit maybe, then we can provide that support through that as well. And then we also have our prevention programs. So our prevention team, they have prevention programming throughout all age levels. So, I mean, K through 12 and even college campuses as well. So they can go in and have these open conversations and prevention, provide that primary prevention for kids.
That is awesome that you have people that just literally come alongside each potential victim and be able to walk them through that entire process. I think that's awesome that you guys provide that. With our pandemic, obviously it's affected so many people, and honestly, everybody's been affected by the pandemic. How has it affected your organization and the programming and the people that you're trying to help?
So it has, in the height of the pandemic, we saw a drop in calls. So we weren't getting nearly as many calls, but the violence was still happening.
Sure.
So they were not, less survivors were able to leave the situation to make those calls or to go to the hospital. There were, and then now we're seeing like an uptick in calls, especially our counseling program, to go through because of the duration of being in the home or being with the abuser, the level of violence was worse.
Wow.
So then that has increased our numbers for counseling, and also our legal advocacy has seen an uptick as well.
I mean, obviously, when you're stuck into a pandemic and you have no other options, I mean, that's horrible for people that are in abusive situations.
Yes, yeah. So they were either not comfortable going out, or so we ended up having to adapt really quickly to being able to provide teleservices. Our counseling didn't see too much of a decrease throughout the whole time. They just kind of switched to that teleservice. And so then and then even trying to, I'm also the legal advocate for Compass, and so trying to help people with protection orders during that time took a lot of learning how to explain without using visuals.
Sure.
You know, emailing making sure that they had access to the paperwork, and then discussing over the phone different how to fill it out and everything. So it just kind of made a hard switch.
Oh yeah, you had to pivot just like the rest of us.
Yeah.
And how to meet the needs of our people and do it efficiently. So that's wonderful though, that you guys were able to be creative and to be there for the victims for sure. You know, this is such a hard topic to even talk about. But I know as a community, people want to know, what can we do to prevent sexual assault? Do we need more education in our schools and college campuses? Do we need parents to do more education at home? You know, what do we need, and what can we do as a community to prevent it?
Well, definitely having the conversations, even though they're tough. You know, with Compass prevention programs in schooling, if parents can have those conversations throughout the child's growing years, you know, it's not necessarily a one and done conversation.
Absolutely.
You can't just talk about it and then, you know, think, okay, well, we had the talk, so that's it. These are conversations that are needing to be had multiple times. And so, I mean, parents can always reach out to their schools and see if are they taking part in the programs that we have available? Can we get in there? Or even just reaching out to Compass and you know, working through that way. So.
Well, I think you said a very key statement, that it's been literally the running theme throughout our whole time together today, is how parents have to be involved. And it isn't a one-time conversation at all. And when you have children like we do, I mean, it's a constant, you know, as they're growing up and age appropriate, you have to have these conversations. And so that kind of time that you're taking as a parent with your child is so valuable. And it is our job to educate them and get that knowledge. But we also have amazing resources right here in our community, and you guys are definitely one of those resources for sure. What about college campuses? Like, what can they do? People that are in college, and we know that sexual assault is a part of that, unfortunately. What kind of resources are on college campuses, to your knowledge, that could help them?
Well, we do have 2 campus advocates as well. One is at Malone University, and one is at the Kent State in Tusk County. And so they are there to provide those same services there on campus. So colleges can definitely reach out to us to take part in the prevention programs or to see what they can do as far as advocacy. The Title IX has been having a lot of changes, so we've had to adapt as well as advocates. So that's a big piece too, and learning the Title IX changes.
Sure. Do you think that all campuses, all college campuses should have, people like yourself available and ready to help out in programs on campus? Or is this something that only certain schools can get? Like, is this something that's attainable to have at college campuses?
It would be definitely important for all campuses to be able to have somebody, some sort of advocate or some sort of trained staff person even, to be able to give that support and the information, and to have, like we said, the tough talks even throughout their young adulthood.
Absolutely.
Because they're very, very vulnerable as well.
Absolutely. What kind of plans do you have for 2021? I know, like, a lot of people, a lot of their events and things that they were excited about this year had to be canceled. But for next year, what kind of plans do you guys have?
Well, it's definitely pretty unpredictable.
Yes.
So April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and those are normally when all of our big events are.
Okay.
So, just making sure if people want to follow us on our social media or keep in touch with us to see what updates, if we can do things in person, then we'll be planning some big stuff in person. If it needs to be virtual, then we'll be working on virtual activities as well. So,
well, you've given us such great information, Melanie. Thank you so much for all of that. And I think just to wrap up our segment, it would be so good to find out how the community can help out in your organization.
Okay, well, we do have volunteering opportunities, and people can go to our website to look up that information, because it's really important for survivors in our community when there's support.
Absolutely.
So not just the prevention in the schools, but also just the discussions around it, and if someone opens up to you, just starting by just really believing them, really supporting them, getting them connected to resources, having them reach out to a hotline. It's really important and can make a huge impact.
So there is a specific tab or place on your website that people can go if they want to volunteer and be a vital part of helping somebody through this type of journey.
Yes, they can contact us and we'll get them signed up.
Wonderful. Well, you heard it here, you guys. You have the opportunities to definitely become involved and to make a difference. Hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to our Community Freedom Summit. Well, we've heard from a lot of amazing leaders in this industry this morning, and now today, right now, we get to introduce to you David Morgan. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. He is a former FBI agent of 22 years?
22 and a half.
22 and a half. Got to get that happen there. You worked hard for that.
I did.
So we're so grateful for his experience and his expertise, and he's going to share a lot with us this morning. So let's get started. So David, just share with us about who you are and what you do and what departments you work with.
Well, I'm originally from Tennessee, and so you may hear that in my voice every once in a while. Went to the FBI back in 1996, 22 years, worked overseas terrorism, cybercrime, white-collar crime, pretty much the gamut in the FBI, and was able to see a lot and work with a lot of really great people, both inside the FBI and outside. Retired a year ago, June, and started working more in the educational sector. I work primarily with the Stark County ESC, And 80% of my time is on site as the head of risk management for Jackson local schools.
Wonderful. So how does it feel, first of all, you're retired from the FBI, and then what led you, though, into working with the Jackson schools?
Well, a couple things. It was time to move on, time to do something different, another challenge. Certainly something that was important to try to protect our schools and protect our children. And I have 2 children still at Jackson local schools, and one of which is a girl, and so I really wanted to keep an eye on her boyfriends, and so it helps.
Such a good dad.
It helps me to do that. But being able to provide that service that to them from the experiences that I had, seeing a lot of different things and a lot of different threats, and bringing that to the educational sector that really I don't think has that experience.
How does your daughter feel about you being at school?
Well, we could
talk about
we could talk about that for a long time, but she's fine with it, better than I thought she would be.
Well, we're so grateful that you have that kind of heart and passion that you want to help save our kids. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
What can you share about human trafficking that's happening right here in our community?
One of the most important things I think for every parent to understand is that it could happen anywhere.
Absolutely.
It could happen anywhere, and it can happen to anybody. I think a lot of people have the idea that it's only underprivileged kids from the inner city that have to worry about it, and while they do have to worry about that, maybe more so in those areas, but any child that is left unattended is going to look for validation. They're going to look for excitement. They're going to look for opportunities in their own areas, and they're going to make those decisions on their own.
Sure.
And if a parent is not focusing those outlets properly, they could get connected to the wrong people, and then bad things happen.
Well, and we've heard in this industry, like you just said, it can happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. That even children that seem to be well-adjusted kids, they have great education, they come from good homes, but none of us know what our children are truly feeling. And I think you said a very key word when you said they're looking for that validation.
Yep.
And that leads them down that path where traffickers start grooming and befriending and start saying the things that they're looking for to hear.
Right.
So I'm really happy that you brought up about the validation point. What would you like our public to actually know, though? Because we get asked all the time, are there certain hot spots? Are there certain areas we need to be careful of right here in our community?
Well, I think it's important, anytime your kids are out in an area that can be frequented by a lot of other people, they're exposed. And whether that's the mall or a movie theater or whatever, you could be targeted at any of those places. But what I don't think parents realize that they do every day is they give their teenager a cell phone.
Yes.
or give them access to their desktop computer at home. And when you plug into the internet, you're connecting yourself to anybody throughout the world. And that's good people, but in large part, it's a lot of bad people as well. And it's hard. It's hard as a parent to watch what your kids are doing all the time on the phone. I get that. It's hard for me. I have 3 kids. It's hard for me to monitor what goes on. But the problem is you have these groomers, these traffickers that are working every day to try to groom and convince your child to do something that you as a parent would not want them to do.
Absolutely.
And so parent involvement, parent discussion, I mean, every night I get the same response from my daughter when I ask her how her day was. It's crickets.
Fine.
It's crickets. Well, maybe I'm
just
lucky.
say one word, fine.
I'm lucky if I get a fine. Usually it's crickets. And so I think parents have to spend a little more time trying to dig into that and to make sure that there's not something going on behind the scenes that they're not aware of.
Are there apps or anything that parents can use to help check what their children are looking at on their cell phones, on the internet, or gaming, anything like that would be helpful?
There are, and I think it kind of depends on the operating system and what goes on. And so there's, I think that would be a whole long discussion. We're part, like for instance, my family uses an Apple phone, and all of my kids have Apple devices. but they're all part of my family network. And so we're able to monitor their chats, their messages from our computer.
Great.
And it just gives us a way that we're not going to get everything, because Snapchat and other apps
we
out
talked
there
about that earlier.
that are not going to allow a parent to see what's going on. But by just seeing what you can see gives you an opportunity to kind of understand, okay, this is what's going on in my kid's life. And then at some time, maybe that communication kind of goes dark, and you realize, all right, I haven't seen her speaking to this kid for a while. Well, maybe that means they've taken it offline. They're doing something else. And so I don't mean to make it sound like that it's easy. I think it's harder now to be a parent than it's ever been.
Absolutely.
But it's still something that parents have to do if you want to protect your kids.
And don't you agree that human trafficking is preventable?
I think in most cases it is. I think there's some cases where there's situations at home where a teen feels like they have to escape and get away from what's going on. And in those cases, I think it's really hard for a parent to make those connections because you're getting so much resistance from your teen.
For sure.
And so are those as preventable? Probably not. It's going to be a lot harder. But what's nice is that there's a lot of resources in our area that can help you reach out and kind of wrap their arms around that teen and provide services that maybe there hasn't been in the past.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of the preventative measures that we can do, because I know that's the heart of what you're doing in the Jackson local schools. So if you can kind of share about that,
Sure.
It would be great.
Sure. So, when I started with Jackson, I thought that I was there to prevent the next terrorist attack, the next school shooting.
Yes, for sure.
And what I quickly learned was that the most important and most often incident that I had to worry about was not an attack, but was self-harm from a student on himself or herself. And so what Jackson and a lot of schools in the Stark County area have done is they've invested a lot of time into like the See Something, Say Something app, anonymous reporting systems. We monitor our students' email traffic that goes through the school network. We make connections with our kids, whether it's during connection time itself or in extracurricular activities, with the point of trying to really understand what's going on in their head, and not just saying, hey, how are you doing? But it's a pointed time to try to really make that connection. The same kind of things we're talking about that parents could do. And so when we see those situations where a teen seems to be going off track and they're becoming an at-risk child, then there's care teams that are made up of law enforcement, administrators, mental health specialists that can come in and help the families put their arms around those teens and kind of get them back on the path that they need to be on, and do it professionally. It's not just a former FBI agent that's giving you psychological advice. I wouldn't have the first idea, but I can give other advice that's pertinent. And so that whole team approach has really been very effective. We went from a lot of suicides in our area to none over the last few years, and so it's a very effective way, and it's the same kind of model I think that could be used in the human trafficking arena as well.
Absolutely. What is that process like? So if you do have a troubled teen, maybe a teacher is flagged with it and recognizes, this teen is struggling with some things. What does that process look like for that teen?
Well,
to get the help?
Sure, absolutely. They would typically call me or another administrator within the district, and we would reach out for a care team. In some cases, it's like a mobile crisis team that can respond 24 hours a day and go out to the parent's house and evaluate the student and see what is going on and try to determine, are they in fact trying, in my case, to hurt themselves? And then if they are, get them resources that they need to try to at least get it under control.
I love that. And I definitely want to highlight that this isn't just happening at Jackson. This is happening in all the school systems where our community is coming together and we're doing everything that we can to help prevent anybody from being trafficked, but also anybody harming themselves. And I think that that's the key thing I want everybody to understand, that we have so many amazing professionals here that want to help, that want to make a difference. And the resources are here. We just want the community to be aware that we are here. We are trying to make a difference, but we also need you to help as well. And so I'm so appreciative of everything that you're doing, Jackson schools, as well as all the Stark County schools that we have. That's just an amazing program that children can run to if they know that they're troubled or have a home life that maybe they're being abused.
Absolutely.
They would have an outlet. And we'll be talking later in our segments here about how a teacher saved a child from being trafficked. And so it's important. You know, we all need to be intentional, and we all need to be aware and know the signs. So I am definitely appreciative of everything that you're sharing. One of the things I wanted to talk about is just how, as we as a community, how can we infuse change and take more action in preventing trafficking?
Well, I think most important is to have an awareness, not only that it could happen here, but also to understand that you can stop it.
Sure.
in most cases, and it is by engaging with that student or that child, your own child. It's a very similar model to what we're using in the school systems now, and the teachers. I mean, in many cases they don't know what is troubling the teen, whether it's a self-harm issue or it's a situation where they're being abused at home, like you said, or they're looking to run away and be with somebody else and start that whole trafficking process. They just can see that something's wrong.
Right.
And it's that partnership between the parents watching when the kids are away from home and the parents watching when the kids are away from school, and working together to try to identify those issues and really prevent this from going forward. And so I think that awareness is a big first step. And then the other step is, like I started talking about initially, is just understanding that, you know, giving our children these devices earlier and earlier and earlier in their life is convenient for us. It occupies them. I get it. It allows us to track them and contact them when practice is over. I get it. But it is extremely dangerous. And I'm just as much at fault as anybody else out there. But you have to be engaged with your children. You have to watch what they're doing. You have to talk to them about what they're seeing. You know, and even some of the TikTok videos, I know that's a big topic now for spying, but you know, aside from that, some of the videos that are out there now, even for our early elementary students, are encouraging them to do things that are unsafe, whether it's commit suicide or do other things. And so, and it's extremely difficult as a parent to know that, you know, if they're watching these videos, they kind of come across the screen and then they're gone. And so just engagement with your students, engagement with your children, I think is just so important.
Well, thank you. You recapped us well
great.
To end our segment. Thank you for all the great information that you gave us. And I hope that us as a community, that we take all this information to heart. We can make a difference. It starts with us. It starts in our own homes with our own children. So stay tuned. We have more to come on the Community Freedom Summit.